So now we will turn it over to our host, Dr. Deborah Alexander, who will spearhead this wonderful program.
Thanks, Ollie. It is my great pleasure to present this panel to all of us today. I'm looking forward to hearing their presentations about their resettlement work and the support that they've been providing to our newest Afghan neighbors and the unique challenges with working with maybe some of these new arrivals. Each of them have a wealth of experience and expertise. And so I'm going to very quickly summarize their bios. Mary Cobb has been the director of the Lexington office of the Kentucky Refugee Ministries since 2016. Prior to joining KRM, she worked primarily in global health, humanitarian assistance, and international development. She was also a Peace Corps volunteer and FSO, which is Foreign Service Officer, overseeing humanitarian assistance and development programs. And she's worked in great places, interesting places like Kenya, Senegal, Pakistan, Palestine, and a host of other places. I believe Mary currently lives in Danville, and we're really looking forward to what she has to say about the programs offered at KRM. Dominique Olbert will be our second speaker, and Dominique is the current president of Community Response Coalition of Kentucky, which is a nonprofit program that helps immigrants, and you're going to hear more about the work that they do. Dominique is a board member of the ACLU Kentucky, vice chair of Temple Addis Social Action Committee. Her numerous degrees include clinical psychology and alcohol counseling, and I'm particularly jealous that Dominique's first language is French, since I struggle each day with just speaking English. Our third speaker will be Marilyn Daniel. Marilyn is an ordained elder of the Maxwell Street Presbyterian Church and has practiced law in the Lexington area for 45 years. She was general counsel and senior vice president at Mason and Hanger. After retirement, she was the volunteer immigration attorney at the Maxwell Street Legal Clinic. She's a member of the UK College of Law Hall of Fame, and she chairs the Immigration Committee for the Mayor's International Affairs Advisory Commission. And I believe that Marilyn is also a founding member of the CRC. And then last is Dr. Nadia Rasheed. Nadia is practicing physician in Central Kentucky, a community leader and a human rights activist. She served on the executive committee of the Masjid Bilal, the Mayor's International Affairs Advisory Commission, and on the advisory board of the Kentucky Refugee Ministry. Interestingly, because of our topic, I think Dr. Rasheed brings a particular heart to this topic because I learned from her bio that she was evacuated from Kuwait in 1990. So she has, as I said, a particular expertise for this. And lastly, and we're very proud, she's also a steering committee member of the Christian-Muslim Dialogue. So Mary Cobb, I'm going to turn it over to you to get started.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you to the CMD for having me. Hopefully my internet holds out. I'm going to share my screen and full screen. Oops, sorry. All right, can you all see the screen? Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
I'm going to stop my video to try to stabilize it. Okay. Okay. Your supportive names and faces here. So really to be here. Well, I don't know why my thing isn't advancing. I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, the detail as if I was giving it to a new audience, but as you all know, the United States took on a huge resettlement process in a very contracted timeline starting last fall. So, over 70,000 Afghan evacuees here in parole, which we can talk about if you have questions. Were resettled through the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, really in about a 4-month period. A few kind of trickled in February, but for the most part, those arrivals were really compressed into those few months in the fall. Among these big numbers, Lexington received 126 parolees during that period of time. Most of them still are here in our community. A few of them have moved on to other places. We kind of honestly anticipated more might move on because so many people were requesting to go to Virginia, Texas, California, really places with much relatives or friends. And those other states and cities really could not handle, all of these cases. So we were happy and are happy that most of those arrivals are still here with us today in Lexington. There will be a kind of smaller scale, a much smaller scale, phase 2 of this with just, I mean, it sounds funny to say like up to 5,000 sounds like a small number, but just compared to the massive scale of the fall. These are folks who were placed on with, they call them lily pads, kind of waiting area. Kind of processed the first 70,000 or trickle in over the next few months. We really think that it's most likely we will only receive a very, a small number of these because it's a smaller number to begin with. Relatives here. I just want to put this number in context and scale. I'm sorry, the writing is a little faint on the graph. So this is just the blue line is the annual refugee ceiling that's set by the president each year. And so you can see, I mean, you all knew this, you were following along with us, how historically low that ceiling got during the prior administration. So we went in 2016, the final, sorry, I'm looking for the blue, the final ceiling set by President Obama was 85,000. That's what you see in 2016 there. And then of course you saw it decline for the next few years after that to a low ceiling of 18,000. And then the orange line is the actual admissions under that ceiling. So every year that ceiling is set for the year, and then we can admit to the US up to that maximum level. So as you can see, usually the orange line kind of pretty closely tracks the blue line historically. And if we took this graph back to 1980, you would see that on a longer trends line. Also shrunk, so we didn't even admit, like in 2020, it was also COVID, we didn't get even close to that ceiling. And so the reason I'm showing this is not Afghans, this is that in 2021 through the regular refugee program, not Afghans, the US only admitted about 7,500 people from everywhere, Congo, Rwanda, all the other Ukraine, all the other countries, Syria, Iraq, whatever. So that is what the country was ready to handle after being pretty stripped down, pretty decimated. Resettlement agencies were in some cases closed, or in some cases, in some cases closed, or in some cases just kind of decimated staff-wise. And so that's the level we were at. And I've put this red line here. The Afghan resettlement, that 70, all nations resettlement from the prior year. So hopefully this makes sense. I just put it here to show the scale in a kind of overview way, not in a too detailed way about what KRM does. This is for Afghans and for all. We group these into these groups or these topics. Case management really involves kind of, I like to describe it as accompaniment, kind of walking alongside a newcomer to, as they go through the process of building their life here and kind of getting set up. We, the shortest amount of time that we do that with anybody is 8 months. And it's, most intense in the first beginning stages, even actually prior to arrival, we're doing some work, but it does get kind of less intense over time. And that's the goal. The goal is for people to work us out of a job, to not need us. And, I'll talk about this in a second too, a little bit more, but our clients are so resilient. I mean, you all know this. I don't have to, it's like preaching to the choir here, but people are ready to build their lives. They know what they want. They know what their goals are. They have very high agency. If they have made it here through this process, whether it's Congolese refugee who had to trudge through 17 years, they have that grit and that resilience to kind of make it, to advocate for themselves. This is not, every single individual is different. There's no universal way, but our goal is really to kind of uphold and support that agency within the clients and to just walk alongside them. So we're not really we're not making choices for them or kind of telling them what to do. We're just here as a resource, and hopefully such as the schools and other things that we don't provide directly. So that's kind of the case management part. Could involve anything from school enrollment to helping people open a bank account, get a state ID, housing stuff, all kinds of stuff like that. And then we have a whole group of services that I'm kind of lumping under specialized services here, which I won't go into too much detail about, but this is really important for, some of our clients really need some of these things and some don't. We have a whole employment focus and an employment team, which we're kind of rebuilding and expanding right now, but obviously for self-sufficiency in the long term and for people, being on their own, which is what people want. Employment's a pretty important part of that. So we have a team that works on that. And then we have a bunch of classes, We have a whole lot of levels of English classes. I think one of our English teachers is here as well that introduces people to the Lexington community, things like public safety, the library, right in the bus, all kinds of different topics, health and other things, on job readiness and employment classes, as well as citizenship and other things. I'm a couple part-time. Actually, I think one of our part-time people is on the call as well. This is a really amazing and professional staff. A lot of the staff are pretty new. So as we have rebuilt from what I showed you, the low point on the graph earlier, we have expanded and added staff. And so we're still trying to rebuild from, that low point, and as more arrivals come. And so we are still looking for a few vacant positions for people for that, but we have an amazing staff providing this bigger past few years of numbers that we have served. So I just want to take a second to kind of point out what we can't do, and this is just based on common questions or people say I want to adopt a family, and that's just something of course we don't do. Agency, they're adults who make their own choices. We don't have an adoption kind of program, nor do we have an adoption program for children. That's something that we're just unable to do. Sometimes people do call us and ask how to adopt kids overseas, and that's not something we're involved with. We also, this is what I was referring to earlier. We don't make choices for clients. Sometimes there's a choice that is like adults what to do. So we practice an approach called strengths-based case management and some other techniques. Really, this is really important because when somebody is traumatized, which every refugee is, no matter where they are coming from or how they got out of their home original country, there's a lot of trauma. There are three things that we kind of work on always to restore healing from trauma, and that's restoring dignity, choice, and trust. So we're always trying to keep in mind those things and to give clients even small choices, like where do you prefer to sit in the room? Is there an interpreter you prefer or not? What time do you want to meet? What do you want to talk about in the process? We don't provide clinical medical services or childcare. I know sometimes people think we have doctors on our staff. We don't. We have a coordinator who helps structure for that, but we don't have like a physician on staff. We're looking for a therapist to have on staff for a specialized program right now, but we are still looking for that person. We don't have separate but equal kind of parallel services. I think sometimes even in great service provision, like at the schools or in clinics, people will sometimes call us and say, well, I have a refugee here. What do I do? Students or patients or clients. You know, we don't want a separate exist in the community. And sometimes things don't exist. And so we provide them like English classes, or we also partner with others, all kind of situation. And then I'll kind of skip down. I know I probably am running out of time, but some of the questions that you all sent in, I've just put the questions here. I won't go through each one right now because I know we have a Q&A period, but I'll just talk briefly about a couple of these things. Again, these questions came from your group. So hopefully the questioners are here for these answers. I'll talk, the first two are maybe a little bit financial self-sufficiency. So this takes a long time for everyone. This is not Afghan specific, but every client we get, goes through a process of a few months of settling in and going to classes. Before starting work, they have to get their social security card, which, takes anywhere from a few, probably a month at the shortest to, some longer, unfortunately. We can't currently go to apply in person. That might be changing, but the Social Security office, we used to go like on day 5 in person, apply for that card. With Afghans, they applied for the Social Security cards before coming to Kentucky. So this is not even a delay that we are in control of. That process did get better throughout the fall as people arrived and sped up. But as people are settling in, they're getting their bank account, they're getting English classes, they're getting their lease signed, their kids in school, their medical screening, which also there's a queue, of people waiting for that screening, unfortunately. That's the nature of the system. Once all those hurdles are cleared, we really kind of turn toward a more intensive employment search, with our employment team. But it's rare that someone jumps into employment before like about the 3-month mark, around 90 days. The average kind of time to become employed after arriving. And again, that's somewhat intentional because we want everyone to be set up first and not just beat up work their second day here and then have to ask off a bunch of work to do all their appointments or just not be ready. So again, the average time is probably 4 to 6 months before people get their first job. So I would say that the Afghan community as a whole is pretty much on track the same way that any other refugee community or origin group is. There is a mix of people who are employed, people who are still looking, people who don't quite feel ready. And that again is all, everybody is eligible for cash assistance. That's a public benefit. People who don't qualify for the public benefit through the TANF program have access to other cash assistance that's still federally funded, but it comes through us. So Kentucky, as you may know, limits 10. If we have clients with no children, they still have access to public cash assistance. So everybody has income right away it's a monthly income. The amount varies by family size and other things, but so that's part of the financial stability is, there is arrival money that is used for the rent payment for the first few months, and then they have monthly income from public benefits, and then there's employment income that gets eventually mixed in. So I would, I wouldn't say anybody's financially failing. I would just say there's a mixture of, waiting for employment, already working and doing well, and kind of everything, in between. So just in the last couple minutes, let me pick one or two more of these questions. I'm trying to think of what would be of interest to the largest number of people. Number 4, Afghans definitely do communicate with their families all the time. WhatsApp or other apps like that make it really easy to do that. And that's pretty normal and widespread among all client groups, no matter where they're coming from. And then the last part, Afghan families have been resettled here since probably 2016 or so under the special immigrant visa program. That's people who worked for the US government and get a special visa based on that, sort of oversimplified. But yes, KRM was the resettlement agency for those families as well. Of course, there are also Afghans who just come here in lots of other ways, of course, like as students or tourists or immigrant visas of any other kind. And there are Afghans who have moved here from other states on their own. Some of the wonderful, leaders in the Afghan community moved here because they visited. They are some of the greatest spokespeople for Lexington that I have ever heard. I just feel like home, and I love it here, and it's beautiful here. And that's amazing. And that's a wonderful thing for somebody like that to be in touch with some of the newcomers who, of course, are just like kind of lost at first. Like, is this a good place? Are people going to be nice to me here? So we do have some of the older, I don't mean older, I mean longer resettled families who are really helpful and kind of hosting really the newer arrivals. And that really relates to this question 9. So yes, there's definitely an Afghan community here who are well connected to each other. We as an agency are not allowed to, and we really enforce this, we don't share people's contact information with each other. But what we can do is if someone organizes a dinner or a picnic, which is what has been happening, the kind of older residents have said, okay, we're going to host a dinner. We can invite everyone and people can choose to go or not, so that we're not sharing, confidential contact information. But people really have shown up in large numbers to that, to those kind of events. Everybody's still in our lobby or whenever they run into each other. So yes, it's not an enormous community like in some of those states or cities I mentioned earlier on, but there's definitely a community here. And so I will stop there. I know I didn't answer all the so much for being here, and I will pass on. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary. And certainly didn't expect you to answer all the questions. And we'll have time probably starting about 11:15, 11:20 to ask more questions as well. I see some good ones in our chat. And now I'll turn it over to Dominique.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share my screen. Can everybody see it? No problem? Okay. So, hi everyone, my name is Dominique Albert, and as Deborah mentioned, I'm the president of the Community Response Coalition of Kentucky, which we call CRC or CRCKY. We have been in existence as a nonprofit since 2019, and our mission is to help immigrants negatively impacted by immigration issues. And this is very broad, deliberately, because we knew when we started off that the needs of the immigrant community would evolve, and we wanted to be able to evolve along with them. So when we started, we helped people primarily who were impacted by immigration enforcement. We helped the families left behind. But that was in the previous administration, and that has been less and less a focus of what we're doing now because there's decreased need. In about March 2020, we were mostly focused on helping families, but then COVID-19 came along. And when we saw the degree of need, we pivoted to helping immigrants who couldn't access traditional services. And we helped them with rent, with utility assistance, with food deliveries, a bunch of different things. And in the summer of 2021, as we keep evolving and adopting new programs, we've started to work with Afghan families. So I'm just going to give you a little more background about who we are, and then I'm going to go much more into the details of what we've been doing with Afghan families. We are basically an emergency service, although we do also help in situations that are non-emergencies to help stabilize people towards self-sufficiency. We have a 1-800 number, which is open from 8 a.m. to midnight and is staffed by bilingual receptionists. And what's really key to our organization is we are all volunteer staffed, myself included. We have no paid staff. All our income is from individual donors and grants. And because we don't have staff and because we don't have a physical office, we are able to put almost all our money directly into client services. Our core values are filling in holes in the immigrant safety net. So whatever other organizations don't do, we try to do. We partner with community agencies as much as possible. We seek to have a transformative experience both for clients and for volunteers. Whenever possible, just like KRM, we do not want to duplicate services. We are a small nonprofit, and if somebody else is doing something, we don't want to do it. We just want to be there to help with whatever is not being provided. And finally, although our board has people from a variety of different religions, Jewish, Christian, Presbyterian, atheists, we have a secular orientation. The kinds of services that we provide have grown over time. So one of the things that we routinely provide is immigration-related services. We refer people to reputable immigration lawyers. This is important. Sometimes people come to us, and while we don't have lawyers on staff, it's very important to us to make sure that they have good lawyers. So we check to make sure clients are with reputable lawyers. Just last week, we had to tell somebody that the lawyer that they were working with wasn't licensed to be a lawyer in Kentucky. So it's important for us to be able to help people to do that. And if we think that the clients have any chance of having a case, we do pay for the consultation with a reputable lawyer. For clients who have COVID-19 in the household, we pay rent, utilities, and we bring food. And whatever else they need, we try to provide. And if a family has family members that are more at risk because there are young children, somebody is pregnant, there's serious illness, we're also able to provide assistance. And in some cases, we have people who are not affected by COVID, but who have medical conditions such as cancer or leukemia, who can't access traditional forms of assistance because we assume they are undocumented, although we never ask, and we help them out while they're being in treatment. We also, and Marilyn Daniel is going to talk much more at length about this, so I'm just going to go over it very quickly. We provide food assistance to quarantine households. And finally, the most important part for today, we help Afghans. So we provide culturally appropriate food, TVs to learn English, computers if needed, and it's very often not needed because KRM provides computers, but sometimes there's a reason for a second computer in the household, or the computers somehow didn't get to them, so we assist with that. And of course, we provide referral services. As I mentioned before, we have no office. We meet in community partners' offices or in clients' homes. A lot of our work is done over the phone. Because we don't have an office and we don't have staff, 97% of monies raised went towards helping clients in the past year. And we have large community buy-in. We usually have between 25 and 40 volunteers working with us at any given time, although of course that is always ebbing and flowing. We've helped, it's hard for us to have the exact number, but at least 3,000 people since we have started. So this model has been quite effective. If you ever want to refer a client, you can have them call our 1-800 number or text the number in their language. We have translation available, so that's not a problem. They can email or call me directly. I have a cell phone number, which I'm very often not answering, so it's best to text. And I just wanted to mention very quickly, we have many community partners, which are listed here, and grantors, which have helped us out quite a bit. I'll touch on this in a minute, but we are exploring possibilities of future projects like the CAR program, financial and car management, texting clients about key resources. So we have a lot of things sort of on the burner that we have not yet started implementing. We're always thinking of new programs. So let me focus now on why we chose to help Afghans starting this summer. Well, like much of our work, it fit our mission and it felt like a moral imperative. We were just as affected as the rest of the world by what was going on, and we wanted to help. We felt we had the existing infrastructure, including language access to interpreters, which is very important to be able to help people. Afghans are different for us because they do have legal status, whether it's being a parolee or having a special immigrant visa. They have some kind of status, even though it's temporary in many cases and precarious until the lawyers assist them to get a more permanent status. KRM provides the basics when Afghans arrive, as Mary said, but they have many clients, most of them with a lot of needs, and caseworkers have heavy caseloads. I think they would agree that they wish they had more time to spend with each client, but there are only so many hours in a day. So we do, we do try to sort of fill in the holes of what can't be done. Many Afghan clients do not have co-sponsors, and while KRM is wonderful about ensuring the unco-sponsored getting the same financial benefits as those with co-sponsors, it's a very different experience coming to the US when there are people there to welcome you, not just professionals working to resettle you, but actual community members who care about you. Our position is that social connections matter. We are very different from KRM in that sense because they are much more sort of professionally based. We encourage the development of social connections between clients and volunteers, which is a different orientation. CRC-KY primarily focuses on those who lack co-sponsors because we feel they need the most help. It's amazing how much a group of supportive community members it's amazing how much help they can provide. Our central goal for this program, like KRM's, is to support Afghan self-sufficiency and independence. However, while KRM focuses on necessities like food stamps, work authorization, and housing, we focus on providing social support, needs that the government and KRM cannot fulfill, integration into the community, and in some cases, although not most, additional support to navigate the healthcare system. We do provide food to Afghans, both when they arrive and also even after they have obtained their SNAP, or what used to be called food stamp benefits. Those benefits can go only so far. We partner with Trader Joe's that gives us free food. And if somebody needs to supplement their food with donated food, we are happy to bring it to them, at least until they have one member of the family who is employed. We provide, it's a small thing, but pressure cookers when needed. Pressure cookers apparently are the big deal for Afghan arrivals. They don't use ovens as much as pressure cookers, and it's a little way of making them feel culturally understood. As I mentioned before, when needed, we provide computers, and I think the least official but most important function that we provide is a watchful eye. So when our volunteers bring food, they develop relationships with the Afghans that they deliver food to. They usually bring it to the same family every week. And they can see if something is needed. Do they have clothes that maybe are not seasonally appropriate? Do they need a stroller? Is there something that they need assistance with? We're there. So very often we're in a better position to evaluate what their needs are because of that. We do have challenges. Most of our arrivals are freshly traumatized. Some of them went to experience the Kabul airport bombing. Some of them did not, but are equally traumatized. Our typical refugee would be many years in a refugee camp. Well, the Afghans didn't have that time to process their loss. And they come to us, as Mary mentioned, with an enormous amount of trauma. One of our challenges, to be very honest, is to function as an ally, but not to encourage dependency. Our model, as I mentioned, is different from KRM in that we do encourage social connections, but we also have to draw a line and not make people overly dependent on us. So that's always something that we work on. Another challenge we have is working with people who are illiterate in all languages and getting them to understand the way that our system works and getting them to feel comfortable moving around. Most of our volunteers, like myself, are not Muslim and come from a very different culture. And this can lead to some very funny miscommunications at best, and at worst, it can be a barrier to trust. One of the ways that we have tried to address that is by referring people to Nadia, who you hear more about, and connecting them to the Muslim community, being very aware of the fact that we cannot be everything to them when we come from a different culture. We have a bunch of different things that we do that sort of don't fall in the description of what we do, but I'll give you an example. We had one family who arrived here, and about 2 weeks after they moved into Lexington, they heard gunshots all around them. They were terribly traumatized, and they didn't have access to a phone that day for whatever reason. And that was difficult for them. And even if they did have access to a phone, they didn't know how to use it to call the police. So when we connected with them, I arranged for, after asking their consent, of course, arranged for the chief of police to send 3 people to their house with stuffed animals for the children, telling them how to reach them, telling them that they matter, that they will be monitored, that they're not left alone, and that really calmed them down considerably. Another thing that we have done is sometimes informally give career advice. I was speaking to one Afghan who arrived here with a background in the law and telling her about the possibility of going through a comprehensive overview of immigration law program, which would allow her to practice here at the end and take it's a 6-week course with about 40 to 80 hours of volunteering required afterwards, which would give her an entryway into being at least in the legal field, if not a lawyer. So we do like little things like that sort of fill in the holes. Lastly, I know we're running out of time. Transportation is a big issue that we need help with. Sometimes people need to be transported and we just don't have enough volunteers. We're exploring a car program in response to this, and I won't have time to go into it, but that's okay. We need volunteers to help people learn how to ride the bus. We need volunteers to help people train to take their driver's license. And of course, we always need food delivery people. So I'm conscious of the fact that I am running out of time. I hope that I've answered at least some of your questions. And I'll leave the question and answer part to answer what I did not and turn it over to Nadia.
Let me just interrupt there. It goes to Marilyn next, if you don't mind.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
And that's quite all right. And thank you so much. I learned a lot there, even though I'm a volunteer with you, or at least an infrequent volunteer. And I know there's going to be plenty of questions when we end with Nadia's conversation as well. Thanks. Marilyn, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm Marilyn Daniel, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit in more detail about the food assistance program of CRC. We currently have about 18 volunteers, some more active than others, who deliver food once a week to food insecure families. At this time, we're distributing food to 9 Afghan families of 41 people on a regular weekly basis. Plus, we also deliver food for non-Afghan families on an as-needed basis. So how do we find families who are food insecure? First, as Dominique mentioned to you, we have a website and an 800 number, and many of those families reach out through those 2 vehicles. Thirdly, we get client referrals. If we are helping one family, they will often put us in touch with another family that they know of that needs help. And fourthly, we get referrals from other agencies or individuals who work with immigrant families in this area. We have 4 different types of food deliveries, 3 of which apply directly to the Afghan arrivals. So I'm going to go through those real quickly. We have an arrangement with Trader Joe's. That company has a real concern that food, fresh food in particular, not go to waste. So they have relationships with a number of nonprofits in central Kentucky so that people can come and get the food that they no longer sell. They take off the shelves and will distribute. So our relationship gives us access at the loading dock at Trader Joe's every Saturday morning. Our volunteers can arrive there, pack boxes for the families that we're going to serve. This usually includes fresh vegetables, fruit, eggs, milk, and bread. This is free food that can feed hungry people. Secondly, we have a relationship with Food Chain. When our volunteers are not able to go to Trader Joe's on Saturday, Food Chain does the same pickup at Trader Joe's on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so that we can go to Food Chain on those days and they will share the food that they have picked up. Again, this is free food that can help hungry people. Then with the Afghans in particular, we have bought food. Halal meats and other food items for Afghan clients, we provide so that they can comply with the Muslim religious rules about food. CRC pays for that food. In addition to food, we do deliver baby supplies, paper products, cleaning supplies, that sort of thing, and CRC funds pay for that. Our 4th type of delivery, which we do not use with Afghans because of their religious requirements on meat and other food items, but we also use God's Pantry for non-Afghan clients. These are boxes of food staples, canned fruits, meats, vegetables, bread, cereals, rice, cookies, sometimes frozen meat. So we make arrangements for our non-Afghan clients either to pick those items up, or in the instance with COVID families, we actually do the delivery of the God's Pantry food. How long do we deliver food to clients? For non-Afghans, it's usually 1 delivery unless clients request more than that. They can always ask for more if they need it. For Afghans, we deliver the bought food until they receive their SNAP card, bus pass, and instruction about using the bus system, or They have begun working. We continue delivering Trader Joe's produce as long as they want, because that's a way to supplement the food that they're buying with their SNAP benefits. For households with COVID, we deliver food until all the household members are released from quarantine. Because our Afghan clients see our volunteers every week, we've learned a bit about their lives. In this population, we have seen the ongoing grief of family separation. Most have family members still in Afghanistan, and they talk to them daily. Therefore, their trauma is a continuing day-to-day active experience. Fear for the safety of their loved ones is constant. Adding to that trauma is the immigration process lying before them. Mary mentioned some of the numbers of resettlement, but according to the US Department of Homeland Security, about 120,000 Afghans were evacuated between those dates, August 16th and 30th in 2021, and approximately 70 to 75,000 of them came to the United States. Of those evacuees, more than 36,000 entered the United States on 2-year humanitarian parole. This is a temporary emergency immigration status. Though the media often refers to them as refugees, they are not. Refugees are required to obtain that status outside the country through a well-defined process under the UN High Commission on Refugees. The Afghan evacuees had no time to use that process. During the 2 years as parolees, they must find and obtain some legal basis to stay here, or they could be deported back to a terrorist-led Afghanistan. Most of these parolees will file asylum claims. Asylum cases are complex and require research, documentation, and affordable legal representation. In fiscal year 2021, the US Asylum Office received more than 39,000 asylum claims. In that year, they denied 45% of those completed. That's about a 50-50 chance of being approved. And they have a pending backlog of more than 400,000 cases. Though USCIS has said it will decide Afghan asylum cases in 90 days, approval of those claims is far from certain. If an asylum claim is denied and the individual has no other status permitting continued residence in the US, they may be placed in deportation proceedings, a tragic ending for our US allies. Those here on humanitarian parole live with this uncertainty. We are very fortunate, though, that the KRM legal office began assisting with potential asylum claims on March the 1st. In addition, on March the 16th, the Department of Homeland Security designated Afghanistan for temporary protected status for 18 months from the date that this notice is published in the Federal Register. Only Afghans who were already in the US as of March the 15th will be eligible for TPS. This is a second temporary status available, which does provide work authorization, but no pathway to remaining permanently. Because of their ongoing trauma and the trauma they experienced before, during, and after their fleeing from Afghanistan, we see a serious need for mental health services, especially for children. And there are additional medical issues. We see the struggles they have with language and cultural differences. If at least one member of the family speaks English, the family's life is better. Those who are illiterate, as Dominique mentioned, have the greatest hurdles. This struggle they have in common with many immigrant groups, but because their language does not use our alphabet, they have that additional challenge. The larger extended families who are here together fare better than the single individuals, especially single women. And I think Nadia has spent a great deal of time and effort to address that particular need. Dominique talked about transportation. Although they have bus passes, many of them do want cars. Sometimes they're not able to accept jobs because public transportation does not work for the job location or the shifts that they would work. They need licensed drivers to help them prepare for and take the driving skills road test. But I have come to believe that their greatest need is for a friend, an American friend, someone who can answer their questions, help them understand our culture, have tea with them in their apartments. Many of the families have co-sponsors who provide this support, but as Dominique said, we primarily serve those who do not have co-sponsors. Unlike Deborah and Mary, I grew up in a blue-collar suburb of Houston, Texas, in the time of severe racial segregation. I never knew where Afghanistan was until I was well into my adult years. So this experience has been a very enlightening one for me. Our contacts with these Afghan families, now we've served 15 families with 55 people so far, have been challenging, sometimes heartbreaking, interesting, but very gratifying and inspirational. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Nadia.
Marilyn, that was just excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you particularly for helping us understand the difference about what refugee and parolee and immigrant is. And speaking of American friends, the last of our panel today will be Dr. Rasheed. And so I want to turn it over to Nadia now to talk about the support and work that she's been providing to our latest Afghan neighbors. Nadia, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello? Can you see me? Okay. Yeah.
We see and hear you.
Okay, good, good. This is Nadia Rasheed, and I'm coming to you. I have to make everybody jealous. I'm coming to you from sunny Florida. It's 70 degrees, and I did my morning walk. I want to say that I'm very, very happy to be on this panel with such brilliant women who help every day under very stressful conditions. I have to say thank you to Deborah. I have to say thank you to Mary, to Dominique, to Marilyn, and everybody else who works with me to help these refugees. It happened that in October, I got a text from the Rabbi David Wirtschafter. And he said, Nadia, we are going to sponsor a family and we're doing our best, but we did want we wanted the Muslim community to help us get them oriented in Lexington. So that's how I started with the Afghan refugees. In October, I went and I met the first family that the temple was working with. And I saw a big need, like everybody said, that they needed us to provide services, to be a friend, to take them out. They had so many challenges with the language, with trauma. And so the first thing I did is take my minivan, go visit them, put them in, they were a family of 4, 3 daughters and a mother. And I took them driving in Lexington. And all of a sudden, they started smiling. The facial expression, they were sad in the beginning. And of course, we couldn't communicate, but we could say, good, no good, good, no good. And that was the beginning. Driving in Lexington, showing them around. I actually did take them to get some sandwiches from Oasis. Sahara is available. And then when we took them out to the park, they had their sandwiches. And then I took them back home, and it was a complete different atmosphere. They were happy. The stress that they had was gone. And we don't speak the same language. Then they started going to the mosque. So now the mosque has prayers every Friday. First prayer is at 1:30, and second available prayer is 2:30. So the Afghan refugees started going to the mosque and seeing other Afghan refugees. And that made it better for them because they can exchange phone numbers and then they can talk to each other. And that has made it much easier for the community. We have started through the mosque taking donations. And actually, I have to tell you, I really personally, I get donations from all communities. I have the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, people at work, friends, neighbors. Once they find, even the church in Berea will send us donations and send us clothes and household items to help the refugees. Once people know what's going on, and once they trust you that you're doing the right thing for them, they'll open up their pocketbooks, which is great. And working with these ladies, we've been able to fill a need, knowing what the families need. We will take them out to grocery stores, we will take them out to the park, take them out to Walmart. And like Marilyn said, they do need a friend. And once we go and visit them and we ask about them and we care, you see that it gets easier. And we always tell them always to be patient because things will get better. In the beginning, it is overwhelming for these Afghan refugees to come to Lexington. Most of them don't speak the language. The culture is different. The money is different. The weather is different. And like everybody said, they're coming traumatized. So we have to be gentle, easy, kind. And once they know that we are here to be trusted because we are here to serve them. And we let them know that we are all volunteers and we are here to try to make it easier for them to transition from their country and their jobs and their life to this new life in Lexington. And Lexington is very welcoming, and they're taking the English classes. I actually really have to say thank you to Mary, because Mary, I can see a big improvement in their English. When they're taking these English classes, every time I visit, it's a little bit better and better and better. So with us all working together with Dominique and everybody and Marilyn and I, it just, Deb, I mean, I'll go to Sahara, take some refugees, and I'll see, you know, other volunteers there at Sahara or anywhere, and in any supermarket, taking other volunteers, taking other refugees to the grocery store. So they do feel that there is a community here. We try to make it easy. We try to give them the clothes they need. We're trying to help make it easy for them to get computers, jobs. It's very important for them. Number one, the most important thing for them is to learn English, because once they can master English, then it makes it easier for them to get a job. And then once they get a job, they can start to be self-sufficient. So we always encourage that. You know, in the beginning, because I used to work with other refugees, I've worked with Iraqi refugees and Syrian refugees, and now the Afghan refugees. You know, when they come, they're hesitant and they can't believe that one day it'll get easier. And if you take a picture of them from day one, and you take a picture of them after a year, you see a big difference. They learn the language, they know the city, they know how to use the bus system, some go to school, they get jobs, they have a community, they have functions, they're able to go to the mosque. Ramadan is going to start April 2nd this year. So every day at the Masjid Bilal on Russell Cave Road, there is going to be Iftar dinner where they can go after they're fasting all day. They can go and have a meal. And there's going to be prayers daily. So if they can get transportation, if we can help or anybody can help and volunteer and help them to get transportations to go to the mosque, then they feel that there is a community. And of course, they're very, very thankful for the churches and the temple and everybody who is helping them. One thing that I wanted to stress, that in Islam, it is Islamic law that all individuals who have the right to flee any persecution and to seek protection in any community, including the Muslim community. Refugee assistance is obligatory. It's our obligation as Muslims, as human beings, to help people who flee from injustice, intolerance, physical persecution, disease, and financial insecurities. So it is our duty, it is our pleasure, it is our right to help these people. And so we are getting more and more Muslims able to go visit the Afghan refugees, take them out, enjoy a meal, take them to the mosque. Festivities will start in Ramadan, and after Ramadan, get them some new clothes for the holidays. And little by little, it gets better. I think we're also, like the other ladies said, we encourage them to get a driving permit. We encourage them to take a driving test. And I know different organizations are going to try to help if, you know, big families especially, they need cars. If we know anybody who's selling a car or a donation. I actually have spoken with somebody in our community who many years ago came as an Iraqi refugee. And he has been able to help people get a driver's license, get a permit and get a driver's license, which is a big help. So I think in our community and in the other communities, there are people who are able and willing to help, and everybody has their own niche, what they can do in helping. Take them out, teach English, even something as simple as taking them to Walmart or Costco. I took them to Costco, they loved it. You know, these little things, the outings are really important to them, because when they come in the beginning, they're in their apartment. They don't know their surroundings. They don't know Lexington, and it's very confusing. Everything is new to them. But I try to, and we try to visit, yes, maybe have a cup of tea, and then I want to take them out. And it was funny because years ago, I was working with one widow who had, one Iraqi widow who had 2 children. So I took her out, I drove, and I told her, this is Man of War, this is Tate's Creek Road, this is Nicholasville Road. And I told her, one day, you're gonna have a car, and you're gonna drive, and you're gonna know these roads. So years later, I met her again, and she said, you know, Nadia, when you took me out and you were telling me about the roads, I thought that you must have lost your mind. How am I going to ever know Lexington and know the roads and know my way around? But as time went by, she got a permit, she got a driver's license, she got a car, and now she goes, oh, this is the road that Nadia told me about. Oh, this is the place she took me. This is the park she took me to. This is Nicholasville Road. And it all fits. And even though in the beginning it is so challenging for them and for us, because we want to do our best, and sometimes they get frustrated, we get frustrated, because it takes time, it takes a lot of time. But in the end, you see that it's little by little, day by day, it gets better. And then they do become very active in the community. They become good citizens. They start helping each other. They get jobs. They buy, you know, like a lot of the Bosnian refugees and other refugees, they, after getting jobs, and they buy homes and they become very active in the community. It just takes time, a lot of hard work, and we're always available. And I know the ladies on the panel with me and myself, we get calls all times of the day. But it's okay, because in the end, every little bit helps. And I'm available for any questions, and I hope I made it a little bit easier for everybody to understand everything we do.
Nadia, you were terrific, and you are an inspiration and an example to all of us about how to be a good neighbor. Thank you so much. Talk about what's called the Afghan Adjustment Act, and then it's time for our questions to our panelists. I wanted everyone, Marilyn had talked about the difference in refugee, parolee, immigrant. What's very important for all of us to understand, as Marilyn said, is about a half of the Afghan evacuees that came to the US last fall were given humanitarian parolee status. And it is like an emergency get out of Afghanistan card, but it is not citizenship. It's not permanent residency. They could be returned to Afghanistan at the end of their 2 years here. And so there is a national movement, and it's called the Afghan Adjustment Act, to provide a pathway for the Afghans to some permanent residency status. And right now there are some sponsors in Congress, although it has not been introduced yet. And part of the reason the act hasn't been introduced is, as you all are well aware, we've had the crisis of Ukraine happen. The intent was to introduce the Afghan Adjustment Act this month, but they still intend to introduce it soon. It'll probably be attached to the National Defense Authorization Act. But I just wanted everyone to be aware of how important that act is, because it will provide our neighbors a pathway. And this coming Tuesday will be National Afghan Adjustment Act Day. And so we're asking people through Twitter or through Facebook and also through phone to contact members of Congress, post something about the Afghan Adjustment Act. You can find information about it on the internet, but I'm also happy to send you information about it, and just be aware of how important that is. I think all of us would be devastated to imagine our Afghan friends being rounded up and returned to Afghanistan. And so I just wanted to put in a pitch there for the Afghan Adjustment Act. And I'm now I'll take the privilege of asking a few questions of our panelists, and then it's open to all of you, and I'll back out. A couple of questions for all of you to respond to, possibly. One, someone asked a question about what's the difference in co-sponsorship and unsponsoredship. And then someone asked if we expect the Afghan, I think it was, if we expect Afghans to return? Do they want to return to Afghanistan? Is that their intent? And so I'll leave those two questions, and then others ask your questions as you want, or however Addison wants to facilitate it.
I can start, and others, of course, should pitch in. Hopefully my internet is working. So there are a variety of ways that we do try to link clients to extra community support, and these, my fellow panelists have described a lot of that community support that supplements kind of our official basic package, what we can start people off with. So one of those routes is through co-sponsorship, and that's a matching process of an existing community group. Often it's a faith-based group, but not necessarily, with a specific family to really accompany them with extra support for the first few months. It's a 3-month arrangement. And it also includes some financial support. So that's the thing never in the history of KRM, enough co-sponsors to match with every single case. There are other ways that those who don't have a co-sponsor do get supported. We have more intensive case management programs. So sometimes if there's intensive medical need or other, they have more staff attention maybe. We also have lots of individual volunteers who work with specific families. We have families who come here and join their relatives, their own family members often, of course, would be the first choice for local support. So there's a variety of ways that people can, really get to whatever the theme of the panel is, that kind of inclusion and belonging and friendship, which is so important. We 100% agree. And so we try to kind of use the whole mosaic, one like a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and they kind of like to do their own thing. They don't really want to they're like, we don't want to go to mosque. We don't want to go to meet other people. We're our own friendship group, and we want to kind of explore, some entrepreneurial spirit. They kind of want to be more independent. So it really just depends, and there's a big variety, but I'll thank the group for all that additional supplemental community support, because as they have said, KRM has a kind of social work approach of professional boundaries. It can't be that friendship for everyone. That's why the community support from all quarters, is so needed and welcome. Sorry, the second question was if people would wish to return. I will just say, for this and for all other community, many decades ago actually has this sort of agreement of what the sustainable solutions are for refugee or for forcibly displaced people. And these are in order of preference. Number 1 would be to return to your home if it were safe to do so. That's, what everybody's preference would be. The second one would be to integrate into the first country where they got safety. Usually it's regional, it may be Congolese fleeing to Tanzania or Rwanda and integrating there. And then the third and last kind of choice for a sustainable solution would be permanent resettlement to another place like the United States. So I think that we could probably all agree that it's unlikely within 2 years that it will be safe to return to Afghanistan. I don't see anyone believing that it's just going to be like, okay, go back home. So that would be such a tragedy if people hear what Deborah just said and Marilyn's comments about needing this path to safety, needing the Afghan Adjustment Act, and a permanent path to citizenship eventually for all of our new Afghan neighbors who came here, of course, for good reason, for the.
Thanks, Mary. Dominique or Marilyn or Nadia, anything to add to those questions?
I would like to add something. Am I? Yeah. Because as unlikely as you would think it is, we have had at least one of the Afghan arrivals say that they did want to go back, but that's driven primarily by the family separation. If they have been separated from their immediate family, that daily awareness and grief of that separation can drive some of them to think that they want to go back. I mean, we have talked to the person that expressed that, and tried to explain at this point in time, your family is not going to be better off if you are back in Afghanistan under the Taliban rule. But I think the family separation grief has at least caused some to consider going back, as bad as it is. So I think generally, though, the families we've worked with are really excited about being in the United States. They see it as a land of opportunity. They're just full of ideas and attempts to make the best of it here.
Marilyn, that's a terrific point, and thanks for making it. I'm working with some families here, both in Kentucky and in nearby states, who were separated from their families during that very tumultuous evacuation. And hopefully, that's one of the things that we're hoping from Homeland Security and Department of State, is that they will make it a priority to reunite these families. But it's a really important point. There are many divided families, and that hasn't been resolved yet about what the US will do. And it does remind me to remind others that there are still thousands in Afghanistan that would like to leave Afghanistan, and they have a very different circumstance than, for instance, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. And so just some real important differences. It's much easier in some ways to leave Ukraine and go to a neighboring country, and Afghans do not have that privilege. Addison, do you want people just to raise their hand or speak up or whatever their questions?
I suggest that we just go ahead with open mic, open video at this point, if that's
Thanks a lot.
agreeable. Let's
Sounds
just do
great.
that. Everybody, you're invited to unmute and join the conversation. I'll just go ahead and mention, I appreciate the responses to the questions about how to volunteer. We've heard from Dominique, but as far as volunteering for other organizations, certainly our own faith communities may have outreach programs, and that would be an effective way. But I'm curious with Kentucky Refugee Ministries and just the various ways that we can become a part of being actively involved. Could could our speakers address that?
Well, I posted on how you can apply. I do want to say, in terms of CRCKY, there's such a wide variety of ways to help. You can deliver food, you can become a friend, you can bring them items that are needed that we may already have but haven't had the time to deliver. There's an infinite amount of ways to volunteer, and I would encourage anybody interested just to email me, submit the application, and I would meet with them afterwards, but via Zoom, to figure out what you want to do. And there was a question asked about, is there a minimum time requirement? No. We're very flexible because we're all volunteer based, so you give the time that you want.
Dominique, I think we might especially talk about,
For
we might especially talk about intake workers, because to volunteer as an intake worker, you don't have to leave home. You can do that from your own home. All you need is a phone and a computer.
That's correct. Thanks, Marilyn. We've really got this up and going through COVID, and now it's become a model where it's just quicker to settle, to schedule an appointment via the phone, and then we will deliver food afterwards, things like that if you want to. But if you do not feel comfortable due to COVID or other reasons going out in the community, there's still a lot you can do. And we definitely need intake workers, not just for Afghans, but for all clients.
This is Connie McNeely, and I've volunteered both with Kentucky Refugee Ministry for a number of years and CRC. And I must say, I've done many different things, so you don't get bored based on whatever you might want to do, and it's sort of endless. And you know, I even would think of things to do that I didn't realize ahead of time to be helpful. Also, during COVID, I was one of the intake workers for CRC, and it gave me a real sense of worth because I was so, I wasn't isolated here, but in my house, but I was not able to volunteer as much as I had been before. And so I was able to be doing something during that, especially the first 6 months of COVID, that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to be involved in the refugee immigration community. So I highly recommend it. There's always good training for whatever position you want to do. The hours are totally flexible, and it's just a wonderful experience. And also I've gained so much. I mean, this is really my motivation, I guess, is I've gained so much from working with the clients that I can't say enough about how worthwhile it is.
a few years ago, Connie was the Volunteer of the Year award winner for KRM, so very grateful for her all these years, as I know CRC is. I put a kind of a note in the chat earlier about finding the volunteer opportunities at our website. I can send a more specific link, but our volunteer opportunities are listed with job descriptions, and they are organized by both time commitment and the level of direct client support you want to do, because there are people who sometimes prefer to do admin work behind the scenes, less direct client support. They may have a skill set in marketing or answering phones or something that's more office based, and some of course prefer to be like a youth mentor or an English tutor in someone's home. And so we have a variety of roles listed, and again, I'll put the more direct link here in a second. Our volunteer coordinator, unfortunately, has just very recently moved on. So our normal pattern, and we are recruiting, if anyone wants to be a volunteer coordinator or knows someone who does, our normal pattern is a monthly volunteer orientation session. It's like the first Wednesday of the month or something. All the scheduling is on our website. So we do have, similar to CRC, an orientation and training process. We require a background check, and then we kind of plug you into whatever the role is that you've chosen. We also have even things like yard work. If we have to rent a house rather than an apartment for a larger family, mowing the lawn, helping with that kind of stuff, it could be something that people don't think of as usually a volunteer opportunity, but there's just a wide variety, as there is for the other organizations, of roles. So we will hope to resume the monthly new volunteer orientations. Hopefully we'll only have to skip April as we recruit and hire, and return to that in May. But meanwhile, the ones that we are still taking, even while the volunteer coordinator is in process of hiring, the youth mentoring program. Our youth mentoring coordinator can still do the volunteer intakes for that. And that would be working specifically with someone 16 to 24 years old. It could be academic or career goals, English practice. So that one is still open even while we reconnect on the other positions.
I have a question for our various speakers. I'm I'm a more or less retired minister living in Frankfurt, and I've been part of this Christian Muslim dialogue group for about 10 years. We've had discussions in Frankfurt among the Ministerial Association, which would be mostly Christian based, but we've also got an interfaith community here too, that some of us are part of that. And the question has been about sponsoring, it came up very actively about sponsoring an Afghan refugee family or more in Frankfurt. But then it came up that, well, our transportation system wasn't quite as adequate. We have a city bus service, but it's just, it's just not quite as. So the question is this all Lexington based, or is there a way for those of us who are kind of on the periphery of Lexington or further out to somehow be part of this process, other than, of course, donating money, which, of course, we know we can do. So that's the question: is how do you connect further outside of the bounds of New Circle Road? Yeah.
Yes, that is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked it. We have placed families in various counties outside of Lexington, in the past several years. We didn't do that in the most recent arrivals for various reasons, but I think Frankfurt would be like next on our list. So we have resettled families in Danville in the past, which had great community support for a couple of Syrian families a few years back. We also have, especially in the Ukrainian community, which we've been resettling for several years, there's such, as you know, a large community, especially in Jessamine County, but also elsewhere. So we've resettled Ukrainians to be close to their US, based family members in Madison County, in Woodford County, a lot of surrounding areas, of course, Jessamine heavily, and even Garrett County. And so we know there's capacity in communities like Frankfurt, especially, and Midway has been offering like temporary housing and lots of community support. So I think that is sort of the next place that we would really gear up to probably put 2 families and have all that community support there. We would have to figure out a vehicle donation, as you were mentioning, to, the transportation would be harder, but it's been done before, especially like Danville, they just came up with 2 cars, and we had families who didn't have already family members here. So if somebody had a relative here, we wouldn't put them in another county to be far away from the relatives. So if the factors all line up, we would love to kind of have Frankfurt as a next placement area.
I'd also like to add that while we can't help with formally co-sponsoring, if people in Frankfurt were interested in, say, coming for a day to visit with the family, we're very open to that. There's a lot of things you could do. Take them out for lunch, see what they need, maybe take them to, say, Southland Church to pick up the clothes that they signed up to get. We could really use that kind of assistance. So we don't rely only on people in town. And in fact, we have some volunteers in Midway right now who are very helpful. So it's up to the volunteers if they would be willing to make the trek over. Obviously, we wouldn't just use them for a food delivery, which is for 20 minutes. We would try to figure out what else they can do in that day with the family.
Plus, Steve, you can be an intake worker in Frankfurt.
I love that pitch, Marilyn.
Deborah, I'd just like to say something. I don't have any questions. This has been one of the most invigorating CMD's dialogues that I've participated in. All the panelists were so clear, and even in discussing what they do, their voices were so warm that it would make me as an alien feel, respected and welcomed. So I just want to thank all of you, not only for being here today, but for what you do, because most of the time in these organizations, especially with Dominique, the pay is not the greatest. So you don't get into these vocations to get rich to begin with. But so in other words, you're doing a lot on your own, spending your own money, spending your own time, sometimes sacrificing your own families to help someone else. So I sincerely appreciate everything you do. And I do volunteer with KRM. I wish I could do more. I have some physical issues. I want to continue doing as much as I can. And I try to get more retirees to volunteer. You know, just because you're not working anymore doesn't mean you should just sit around and do nothing, because there's so much to do. So thank you all. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. That was very kind. Any other questions? I'm sure we must have some more.
Yes, I'm curious. I just realized I covered up there. I'm curious, Dominique, you mentioned that you were interested in starting a car program. I also think that the point was well made that sometimes our bus lines make it impossible for people to connect with jobs that they might otherwise take. So, and the thought that occurs to me is whether or not someone is perhaps working with the car dealerships in Lexington to encourage them to, you know, refurbish trade-ins, that sort of thing. What does your idea of a car program look like, and how might we help get that started?
That is a wonderful question. Thank you for raising it. Let me preface it by saying we are at the exploratory stage. We have not 100% decided that we will do this, although it's looking positive. We're trying to determine, first of all, what our legal responsibilities are, what our liabilities are. There's a lot of issues. Marilyn has been a large part of that program as well. And as a lawyer, she is full of, but we'll be liable if we do this. So, which is wonderful and very useful. So we're trying to figure out, first of all, who we can partner with. So for instance, we checked with Goodwill. Well, they won't give a car to somebody who's not a US citizen or a lawful permanent resident. So all we can do is use some of their information, but we can't refer people to them. We're in discussions with Southland Church right now to see if some of our folks can apply to a car there. But one thing that we have a big issue with is it's not enough to give a car, right? We are talking about people from Afghanistan who don't know that they have to pay for their title, who don't necessarily understand that the rules of the road are very different in Lexington than in Afghanistan, who don't know that you have to have a car seat, who don't know necessarily enough English to pass the road test. So there are a lot of hurdles right now that we're working on overcoming. Money is sort of the least part of it. I mean, we're not even at the money. Where do we get the cars? Where do we get them from? The question is, you know, how can we get one? How can we train folks to drive responsibly? And we're in discussion with Global Lex to co-create a training program for folks that includes how do you have your automatic payments for the insurance processed? How do you renew the title? If your child is in the car without a car seat, this is a big deal. You know, it's a whole slew of things. So it's a big wraparound program. And if anybody wants to volunteer to help us, now I'm going to pull a Marilyn. We need volunteers, particularly experts with cars. It is a fascinating area. And once you have a car, you have freedom in Lexington that you don't without a car. I know we've been talking to Nadia. Nadia has put in a great deal of thought and effort into helping people get lessons, you know, get connected with reputable dealers. We as a nonprofit can't approach it quite the same way as an individual would, referring them to one particular person. We're trying to work it out as a system. And I will say that one of KRM's employees, Debbie Goonan, is actually part of our exploratory committee because she used to do a car program at Catholic Charities, and she has been very instrumental. So talk about community partnerships, that's working well. Mary, I don't even know if you knew that, but Debbie is awesome.
Yes, I did. And just
Well,
can I just tack on quickly? Good news to share just really fast that Catholic Charities has agreed to fund the translation of the Kentucky Driver's Manual, which is 70 pages long, into Dari and Pashtun. So they are doing that now, and that will be an amazing. I see.
And Mary,
wide use, other cities will use it, so that'll be helpful as well.
Mary, the thing we're struggling with right now is that's a big step forward, because the person who wants to get a driver's license can take the written test in another language other than English. Now, that written test demonstrates that even though they don't speak English, they understand the traffic signs that are in English. But what we've run up against is the Kentucky State Police say you cannot take the driving skills test unless you speak English. You have to be able to understand the Kentucky State Police officer who's giving you directions. Now, that doesn't make sense to us, and we're trying to track that down.
Well, this is an opportunity for advocacy. And when we used to have the refugee and immigrant advocacy days in Frankfurt, kind of before COVID, we would bring this up every year and target legislators to try to get this introduced to allow interpreters in the car for the test. So that's something that I encourage people to take on as part of this as well. And we like to tell them in Frankfurt, even West Virginia allows this, and Kentucky does not want to be behind West Virginia. So we agree that I would also recommend Central Kentucky Driving School. We have been able to support some clients to go there, and they are very friendly and kind to our clients, and that has been successful in some cases. But it would be a huge effort to send everyone there. So I know there's other routes people exploring, but
I will tell you one success story in regards to a car. My friend's son was going to sell his car. So I got in contact with him, and he had, Dominique, he had a Honda, good car to sell. So we tried to figure out how we can give it to somebody and buy it from him. Anyway, it didn't work out with one group. But then I was talking with one of the church that was sponsoring a couple. Now, this couple, they're both attorneys, they're educated, they used to drive there, they're intelligent, they're young. So the church, the members said, okay, let's see how we can do it. Somebody in the church agreed to pay for the car and get an inspection. What I did, I just did the connection. I did the connection that this is a good car because I know the family and I know it's a good Honda. Then the church took over. They went, they got the car inspected, they purchased the car, and now they're going to work with teaching him the roads. And so this one family, who are both attorneys, soon, if not they get it, yeah, they will be getting a car. And this will help a lot with them to find jobs and to work and transportation. But it was one success story.
Yes, and can I say thank you, Nadia, for doing that. The car is sitting in the person's driveway who paid for the car, and one of the couple has passed the written test. His brother has missed it by 1 point, I think, and now they have to wait until taking the on-road test, but Nadia, and I've got to say to all of you all who are speaking today, Jack and I are just working with the family, the Second and Maxwell Street, our Presbyterian churches are co-sponsoring. Dixie, I think, is the only other one from our group who's on the call, but it has just been wonderful. Deborah, I think most of you've all met, a lot of you have met this couple. They're terrific. I think we've had a wonderful time getting to know them. I was just over there having tea yesterday afternoon and catching up because we'd been gone. And so I just say thank you to all of you who are working on all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
for,
wanted to ask a question.
I
sorry.
met at the mosque when you brought them to the mosque. It was, you're the one who introduced me to them because I was at Friday prayer one time and you had brought the couple and that's where I met them. So
Yeah.
really, bringing them to the mosque that time when I was off really worked really, really well.
Well, but may I say thank you to Ollie, because I knew Ollie and I've been to the mosque, I was able to say to Ollie, we want to bring them to the mosque. This was when they first came.
Right.
And so then Nadia was there, and yes, so it's a matter of connections in the community, yes.
That's a great point, Ann-Jean, about how important the connections are. And you can see it because I know several of us are volunteering in different ways, but it's because in some ways of people that I've met through Christian-Muslim dialogue that I've been able to find ways to help. One question I wanted to ask that came up in our chat, and I don't think it's been addressed yet. And Nadia, this is particularly for you. Someone asked if you could tell a little bit more about what celebrations at the mosque that either our Afghan neighbors have participated in or celebrations that might be coming up. And I wanted to also add that I know this last week was Nowruz, and Nowruz, of course, is the first day of spring. And it was really my most favorite time when I lived in Afghanistan. And I don't know if there was actually a Nowruz celebration or not, but I'm hoping that in the future, that might be something that we could make sure to support, because it's a wonderful time of bonfires and kite flying and food. And I'll just put that out there and wondered if, Nadia, what you had to add about celebrations at the mosque or ways that they participate.
So we have two big holidays during the year, two Eid. Eid means holiday. The first Eid is at the end of Ramadan. Ramadan changes every year because we're on the lunar system. This year, the Ramadan, which is the month of fasting, will start April 2nd. April 2nd will be the first day of Ramadan. So we will fast from dawn to sunset. No food and no water. Prayers will be at the mosque. At the end of the day, when the sun goes down and we break our fast and we eat, there will be food at the mosque, okay? And before COVID, it was every day. I'm not sure now, but I think also every day there will be a family that will sponsor the dinner when they break the fast at Masjid Bilal. And definitely I know in the weekends. So this is a good area or a time for them, definitely on the weekends, to come to the mosque and have a meal with all the other Muslims. At the end of the month of fasting is 3 days celebration. So usually the mosque does activity for the children. And then before COVID, we would get together, the mosque would rent and the Islamic community would rent a hallway or a place where we can all go and have a prayer. And so we'll go have a prayer at the end of Ramadan. So that will be happening. Also, we can also contact Masjid Bilal and see what's going on now that it's a little bit better with COVID. And then the other one, 2 months later, is the other celebration, the Eid celebration, is when is the one where the pilgrimage to Mecca. So at that time, in 2 months after Ramadan, there'll be another Eid celebration. Ali also has all the information from the mosque, I'm sure, and you can always contact the mosque because I'm not up to date with everything that's going on. But Friday prayer every Friday starts at 1:30. So if anybody wants to go and meet and see what's going on and take the schedule. But Ramadan is a good time for all the Afghans to come to the mosque on a daily basis and pray and eat with the Muslims. Ali, are they going to have iftar dinner every night this month for Ramadan at Masjid Bilal?
Right now, we've announced that we'll have iftar, like community iftar, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So the weekend would be a good time to bring, if you're sponsoring a family, would be a great time to come. We'll have food and we have tents set up outside. And so it'll be a great time for them to meet a lot of people in the community. Another thing we're working on, we have a van that the masjid has purchased. So I'm working with or asking the executive committee to get that up and running so that if somebody needs a ride to the masjid, then, maybe we could pick them up in that van. But certainly on the weekends would be an excellent time for if you're sponsoring a family or if you want to come yourselves just to commune with us, we'll have food then. And as Nadia said, during the week, people bring food, but there's no schedule that we have yet for that. And if there is, I'll try to let people know. But definitely Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you're welcome to join us for Iftar. And Iftar is just breaking up the fast.
That's great.
Let me say, Nadia and Ali, what you just told us is extremely useful.
Yes.
We should not try to take our Afghan families to lunch after April 2nd. I mean,
Absolutely.
That's not something that we would be aware of. So it's important for us to know that. And I will say some of the families that I've worked with, the mosque has meant a great deal to them. They have really been able to make some connections there that I'm sure they could not do any other way. And I want to come in on in the chat box. Steve suggested a get together for teenage Afghans. And that's something the mosque would certainly be much more effective at doing than any of us would be. I think I can say, Dominique, I think I can reveal that we know there was a problem a week ago with 2 young Afghan teenagers who apparently were assaulted by some gang members. So there definitely are issues for the teenagers that we haven't been addressing at all because of our focus has been on food for the family.
Okay. So if you could send me an email and I can provide that in the chat. We have a new imam, which you may, in the Christian faith, you equate that to a pastor. And one of his main focuses is working with youth in the community. So he's starting to put together classes and hopefully events for this group. So that is something that we can definitely look at addressing.
Well, if you put your email there, Ollie, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
I think there's another question from Ron Smith about our Afghan immigrants and COVID. If they've been vaccinated, are they free from COVID? What do we understand about that? Maybe Dominique or Mary could answer that.
Well, I can't speak for KRM, but for CRC-KY, part of our intake involves asking what stage of vaccination are you at? So if they were not vaccinated to the maximum, and sometimes that's 2 shots and sometimes that's 3, it depends on the length that they've been here, we would communicate that to the person who's volunteering, because we consider that a basic health necessity right now. We can't guarantee that they don't have COVID because we don't test them, but we can share that they have been vaccinated.
Similarly, we don't have a guarantee, but we currently still require and request that all staff and volunteers wear masks at all times when we're delivering direct services, including, transportation, and we have a vaccine requirement for staff and volunteers as well.
And
I
Mary,
wanted to ask, I'm sorry, Marilyn.
Which I know wasn't your question, but the client.
Am I remembering correctly that all of the arrivals got the first COVID shot at the Army bases when they entered? Is that right?
That's right. And most were there. They had to be there at a minimum of 21 days because of the MMR vaccine booster. Most, as you know, were there longer. So the vast majority did receive full vaccination, maybe not the booster, but one shot J&J or two shots of the other before ever coming to Kentucky. So yes, that's a good point.
That's useful. Mary, a quick question I had that was raised with what Ollie was saying about the community iftars. At KRM, is there a place where it's posted, or what? Or how do they know about the mosque and the upcoming iftars that are open to them? I guess if they're.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we'll post anything that people share with us from the mosque or elsewhere through the community about events. We have a kind of a display of flyers in our lobby. We have things caseworkers can hand out to people to let them know of what's going on. We unfortunately can't share our clients, info out. And I know that would be ideal in some ways, but some clients have specifically said, I don't want to do that. So we handle it as letting the clients know, and then clients can choose, to go to them. So if you all wanted to share kind of that schedule that you were talking about, we would love to have it available to share with new arrivals and to have kind of in our office for people coming and going who've been here a while as well.
Deborah, I just shared the Masjid Bilal website, which is
great.
is very up to date. People could even go on the website and sign up to receive our weekly newsletter. So it goes directly to the person's website. Email account. So and also we have a website app that they can, put on their phone so they're updated every day. So it's pretty easy to track what we're doing now.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions before we wrap up? Turn it back over to Addison.
I had one question. This is Connie again. Is there any transportation provided by the mosque to help families get to Iftar, or is it if they don't have a sponsoring family that or church that works with them or faith group?
I can't say for sure. I know we have a van, but I know there were some discussions about insurance. So I'm not going to say today that we have that van available to pick up people, but hopefully in the near future that will be the case.
Or individual families who might volunteer to pick up someone?
That's a possibility. So
right.
If you want to email me with a request, then I can certainly try to help you figure it out.
Thank you.
Great, Ollie.
I have another quick question about, and Marilyn, this may be your area. What about liability for volunteers?
CRC does have insurance, which covers our volunteers. But yes, that is a valid concern. We always want, if you're providing transportation at all, you have to have insurance on your car. And I think that probably the transportation is the biggest possible liability, because if you were in an accident, you would want to be absolutely sure that that you were covered. That's part of the issue, as Dominique indicated, that we talked about the car program, because sometimes the title owner of the car can have certain kinds of liabilities, even if the owner isn't in the car when something happens. And so we've been struggling with, how do you transfer titles without tripping into that kind of liability?
Just to add to what Marilyn is saying, I remember in the beginning, I was saying that 97% of our monies go towards helping folks. That 2% of that is insurance. 2% of the 3% is insurance, because we don't want our volunteers to be liable for anything. So that is a main concern for us, the board members, anybody in contact. It's also why we ask for background checks, because our insurance company requires it in order to cover us.
Marilyn, the liability insurance issue is that hard to obtain for somebody in the immigration status that they will have?
Jack, I think, as far as I know, I've only worked with one family that has bought a car, but they got the insurance passed through the dealer. So the dealer had insurance, and then they're going to be able to pick up that insurance once the title actually transfers. I'm not sure. I don't think we've actually talked with any insurance companies, but I don't think there should be any problem. You know, insurance companies can decide whether they provide it month by month or quarterly or semi-annually. My guess would be that many of these people would only be able to get it month by month because of their uncertain status for many of them. They have legal status, but not permanent status.
Mary Cobb has also put in our chat that in her experience, I think that she said that immigration status wasn't typically asked by insurance companies. I think I understood that right, Mary. We've reached the noon hour. And so I hate to close up this discussion because it's been so wonderful, but I know other people have other obligations. I want to thank these wonderful women, a terrific panel. And even though I think of myself as a volunteer with both KRM and CRC, I learned things. And so thank you, all of you. Although I am a bit envious of Nadia joining us from Florida, but I won't hold that against her. So thank you. You know, our gratitude to the four of you for taking time out on this Saturday morning. I think everyone, by the comments, you can tell how much we appreciated it, how much we learned. And I think we also have a number of ways that some of us might want to be able to help. I'm going to turn it over to